They spoke of Terrans as one might whisper ancient names of gods long dead. Stories mostly, fireside warnings, military legends no one took seriously anymore. The ghost builders, the burned sky race, those who fought time. No confirmed sightings in over 1,000 cycles. The last written record, a plea for mercy etched into the core of a neutron moon. So when the scanners blinked red above the fortress world of Sthal Prime, no one believed it. Not at first, not when they saw the fleet, not when they saw the flags, and certainly not when they heard the name they'd all buried in myth, Earthborn. It began like a joke, a signal crackling across a frequency no one had used in centuries. Old tech, dead protocol, Terran origin. The control tower on Velmari Prime flagged it as historical debris. The operator laughed. "This band's been silent since the binary Rex," he said. High Command dismissed it. Probably a reflection, a ghost loop. But it kept repeating, precisely every 12 minutes. Same code, same structure, a burst of static, then a ping, then a faint, unmistakable signature embedded in the checksum. Terran Beacon ID, Sovereign Group Sigil 4B-6. One analyst recognized it, from archived data fragments. Pre-Exodus Earth. She ran it again, and again. Each time the checksum matched. Each time the translation concluded, awaiting witness confirmation. No one knew what that meant. The sector admiral ordered a scan sweep, just in case. 12 minutes later, the signal pinged again, but this time across 5 systems, simultaneous, identical, perfectly synchronized. That got their attention. A scout patrol was dispatched, 1 frigate, 1 recon vessel, standard protocol for an anomaly retrieval. The transmission had no source vector, but gravitational drift markers suggested the core of the Null Drift, a region known for sensor mirages and forgotten debris fields. The patrol reached the edge of the drift on cycle 7.18. Everything looked normal, empty, dark, still. Then their long-range optics blinked. One of the junior technicians gasped, then whispered, "Captain, you're going to want to see this." 20 ships, massive, wedge-shaped, obsidian-plated, no lights, no heat, no movement, silent, still, waiting. The recon officer scanned the hulls. No registry matched, no Empire designation, no known design templates. But each ship bore a marking, etched into the outer armor. Deep, precise, familiar. Earth runes, pre-digital script, block-lettered Terran standard. They translated loosely to Echo, Mercy, Return, Witness. No 2 ships bore the same word, but all shared the same posture. Absolute stillness. "They're not broadcasting," said the comms officer. "Not even passively. No radiation, no EM field, not even background leakage." "Derelict?" someone asked. The scan operator shook her head. "No damage, no pitting, no drift wear. Their positioning is too perfect." The ships were not aligned randomly. They orbited one another in a spiral pattern, motionless yet gravitationally locked, like stones in a still pond. The recon captain broke protocol and activated the emergency signal. Direct line to Central Command. "This is Captain Evern of Scout Frigate Kellen 9. We have eyes on 20 unknown ships, possibly Terran origin." A pause, then slowly. "Those aren't relics. Those are ready." The message reached High Command. They didn't laugh this time. A meeting was called within the hour. Strategists, war historians, first contact specialists. No one agreed on what to call it. No one knew what it meant. But everyone remembered the old stories. Earth had vanished 600 cycles ago. During the Fracture Wars, when systems bled themselves for dominance and nothing remained but silence. The official narrative said humans were lost, consumed by civil collapse or extinction. No evidence had surfaced since, until now. Some believed this was a trick, a psychological weapon. No human technology could last that long. No human fleet could hide undetected for centuries, unless they never left. Or worse, they evolved where no one could see. The admirals wanted to prepare a preemptive strike. The philosophers said to listen. The prophets began fasting. The signal continued. Every 12 minutes, ping, static, pause. awaiting witness confirmation. The scouts remained in orbit, close enough to see, far enough not to provoke. Then on the 12th hour of observation, the Terran ships shifted, not movement, just light. Each hull reflected a shape that wasn't there before. A single figure, human, small, standing on the outer plating, no suit, no oxygen, just watching. The scouts scanned furiously. Nothing on sensors, no body mass, no heat. But every camera showed the same thing. Every screen confirmed it. One human, every ship. Same posture, same gaze. As if to say, we were always here. You were just too loud to notice. The scouts pulled back. Not from orders, from instinct. For the first time in decades, the entire outer fleet stopped transmitting. They listened and waited. Because if these were ghosts, they remembered how to haunt. The chamber echoed with overlapping voices. Strategists argued with historians. Historians clashed with ethicists. Ethicists were drowned out by generals. In the capital seat of the Core Concordance, the emergency quorum had been called for the first time in 91 cycles. One reason, one signal. A Terran broadcast on a dead channel. A fleet with no declared origin. Ships that shouldn't exist. Humans are extinct, said one ambassador, slamming his data tablet on the polished obsidian table. They've been extinct for centuries. No, said another, an archivist from the Deep Scholars Assembly. We buried the story. That's not the same thing. Murmurs spread. The room darkened. A projection bloomed in the air. 20 Terran vessels, suspended in formation above Null Drift. Black as void, still as death. Unarmed, someone whispered. They haven't fired. They haven't moved. Yet, corrected a commander. Counselor Dravek's first seat of defense stood. His robe bore the crests of 5 victorious campaigns. He had never feared a battlefield, but he looked afraid now. We buried that war, he said, and we buried it deep. You mean we buried the truth, muttered another voice. No one replied. Hesitantly, the floor turned to the AI curator of historical warfare. An avatar shimmered into place, old, polished, flickering like aged film. It began to speak. Archived war logs from the Sol conflict have been reopened under emergency directive. Final battle occurred in orbit of system JX-23B. Outcome, inconclusive. Inconclusive, snapped someone. We destroyed them. The AI paused. Records indicate the human fleet collapsed 3 suns into singularities, created an artificial gravity wave that tore through 3 sectors. Both sides withdrew. There was no victor. The room fell silent, not because they believed it, but because somewhere deep in their memory, they already knew. The logs continued, images, ships splitting apart in artificial storms, planets evacuated without warning, empires vanishing without a shot, and then the disappearance. No trace, no signal, until now. Why return now? Asked a young diplomat. The answer came not from the AI, but from a very old general. His voice was cracked stone. They're not back for diplomacy. Everyone turned to him. He was from the era just after the human quiet, old enough to remember being told never to say Earth aloud. He continued. They never surrendered. They just left. For what? Someone asked. He shrugged. Maybe peace, maybe evolution, maybe waiting. A different voice cut in. Cold, calculated, the head of Xeno Strategic Protocol. If they turned stars into weapons before, imagine what they can do now. But they haven't fired, countered a peace envoy. They haven't even moved. A moment passed. Then someone said it, softly. Because they don't have to. The council fell quiet again. The silence pressed like gravity. Another screen activated. Live footage from the scout frigate, Callan 9. The ship still hovered, still silent, still aligned. They're waiting, said the scout captain over the comm. Not for us, for something else. Orders? Asked a subordinate. High command didn't answer, because there were no orders to give. Not yet. Send a diplomat, said someone. To what? Snapped a general. To stare at hulls and hope they blink? Open a channel. They won't answer. Fire a warning shot. Do that, said the old general. and they'll remind us what they used to be. Paranoia sharpened. Emergency protocols activated. Fleet movements accelerated. But no one was brave enough to approach. Instead, they studied, tried to decode the markings. One ship bore a sigil that matched no language, but resembled a human fingerprint. Another's hull reflected stars that weren't there. It was as if the ships were remembering, reflecting. The most devout species, the Meranthi, began to fast. They called it the return of witnesses. They claimed the Terrans had transcended flesh. Not evolved, said one monk, ascended through grief. Others weren't so spiritual. They're just ghosts, said a commander, running automated routines, old war tech. If that's war tech, said the fleet engineer, we're children playing with sticks. The debate grew ugly. Accusations flew. Some blamed AI sympathizers. Others blamed the historians. We should have erased them completely. We tried, came the bitter reply, and we forgot that memory doesn't obey laws. Eventually, a vote was held. Should contact be initiated? Result, inconclusive. Instead, the council did what empires always do when afraid. They waited. They watched. They prayed in data and diplomacy. And far above, 20 ships simply drifted. Not approaching, not departing, just waiting to be seen. High orbit. Observation deck 19K. Velrathi science vessel Obscura path. 6 engineers, 1 AI core, and an exo-astrophysicist watched the Terran fleet from a safe distance. Or so they thought. The ships didn't emit power signatures. They absorbed them. Scans confirmed it. 0 detectable propulsion systems, yet their positioning adjusted every 3.6 minutes. No drift correction, no inertia trail. They simply moved. Closer, then farther, then back again. We're not watching them, muttered Lid Tech Sornhalix. They're watching how we watch. The Terran hulls weren't alloys. They were biometal. Under high magnification, the outer skin of the vessels pulsed faintly, like respiration. Living steel, no well lines, no visible seams, like something grown in deep time. One of the junior analysts ran metallurgical comparisons. The structure defied all known crystal arrangements. Molecules arranged in Fibonacci spirals, self-replicating, self-healing. These ships weren't built, whispered the AI core. They were remembered. Velrathi science councils received the reports with skepticism. The data was re-verified 6 times. Still held, still wrong, still terrifying. Then came the propulsion test. A vessel, designation SIGIL-7, blinked, not moved, not accelerated. One moment, it was 10,000 kilometers above orbit. The next, it was floating 50 meters above the observation platform. No warp signature, no hyperspace displacement, no sound. Gravity negative drive, theorized Dr. Rem Virial. They don't push through space. They fold space toward themselves. Every mathematical model failed. The Terran engines existed outside known thrust or vector logic. They don't travel, said the AI core. They suggest space let them be elsewhere. When Sigil 7 moved again, it left a ripple in the visual feed, like a blink in consciousness. Cameras recorded static, but observers described a shared sensation, a single heartbeat, not theirs. Weapon scans were worse. No consistent readings. Each scan generated contradictory schematics. One image showed a railgun the size of a mountain. Another showed an absence, just vacuum where physics dissolved. Another revealed rows of glowing glyphs hovering off the hull. Maybe the weapons are conceptual, guessed Sornhalix. Maybe the threat isn't what they fire, it's what they remember firing. A sensor drone was launched. It approached one of the smaller vessels, Sigil 12. As it neared, the drone's outer hull began rewriting itself. Markings appeared in Terran script, phrases, symbols, an old human dialect, long dead. Then the entire drone disassembled, voluntarily. Its components floated still, aligned in orbit around Sigil 12. A perfect halo. Show of power? Asked a fleet admiral. No, said the AI. Show of memory. Another vessel, Sigil 3, initiated what appeared to be a broadcast, but no transmission left its frame. Instead, every reflective surface aboard the Obscura path began to flicker. Mirrors, visors, polished screens, each revealed a message. "We're here because you forgot." Dr. Rem collapsed, not from injury, from understanding. He had spent 30 years researching the Terran Exodus. He had written it off as myth. Now it wrote itself back across his entire discipline. More anomalies emerged. One ship pulsed in harmony with nearby planetary tides, adjusting its mass subtly, affecting gravitational flow without touching a single molecule. Another began resonating with the electromagnetic hum of the Velrathi fleet, tuning itself like an instrument. Some ships whispered to satellites, not data, emotion. One relay drone recorded a single emotion burst, remorse. Back on the core concordance, top strategists reviewed the findings. "We can't classify this," one said. "We can't even understand it," said another. But the question hung unspoken. If this was just observation, what would action look like? Meanwhile, Sigil 4 descended into low atmosphere of the gas giant Verilon. No heat shields, no sound barrier breach. It floated through storms that shredded Imperial freighters. Unharmed, Velrathi fighters scrambled for intercept. None could lock on. One pilot, mid-pursuit, reported seeing something impossible. His own childhood home reflected on the ship's surface. He disengaged, never flew again. Back in the observation lounge, Soren Halleck stared at a frame from Sigil 4. The phrase had changed. "We're here because you forgot. We stayed because you erased." He didn't sleep that night. No one on the Obscura path did. Some say the Terran ships are weapons. Others say they're monuments. But one engineer offered a different theory. They're not here to fight. They're here to remind the galaxy what fear used to feel like. Dr. Exivar Torin was not a man prone to fantasy. As chief historian of the Imperial Thought Engine, he'd built his reputation dismantling myths. Now he sat before a glowing terminal, surrounded by thousands of banned Terran texts, and trembled. He had only opened them to mock, to disprove, to dismiss the childish stories told of humanity. Stories of kings that never spoke, children who turned off stars, ghosts that rode memory like ships. He laughed. Once. Now, with Sigil 1 hovering over the core concordance, those stories read differently, too detailed, too accurate. "Impossible," he whispered to no one. "Fables aren't blueprints." But page after page, story after story, each Terran myth matched something in the fleet's design. Holes patterned after beasts from a poem titled The Hundred-Eyed Lion. Shield harmonics shaped by the cadence of ancient lullabies. Ship names pulled from folk tales once declared nonsense. Whisper's Edge, Cold Mercy, the Ship of Last Breath. He searched the database for cross-references. 1,000 links. 10,000 more. One tale stood out, the legend of the Silent King. In the story, the king never gave orders, never lifted a weapon. He simply walked through empires. And when he left, those empires forgot how to lie. It was absurd. But the flagship matched the story's description exactly, down to the burn scar across the left bow, a detail never recorded outside the story. Exivar's hands shook. His pride warred with fear. The myths were consistent across planets, languages, and centuries. Far too consistent for coincidence. They weren't folklore. They were documentation. He loaded a restricted file. Title, The Sleep Directive. The story within told of a machine left dormant in the heart of a dead moon. A library wrapped in dreams. It would awaken only when the stars began lying. Translation logs dated this myth 217 years before the last known Terran transmission. But the moon in the story, Caris B7, had just begun to emit pulses, identical to Terran cadence patterns. Why, Exivar asked the void, would they bury truth in fiction? The answer came slowly, and then all at once. They hadn't. They'd encoded instructions, woven warnings into wonder, lessons into lyrics, schematics into songs. He opened another archive. The Girl Who Hated the Light, a Terran parable, a child born in a world of false suns. She turned off stars with a whisper, not from anger, from mercy. He matched a line from the story to a line of code intercepted from Sigil 6. Perfect alignment. Another text. The man in the dust. A wanderer carrying only stories, able to unmake cities by reminding them who they used to be. On Sigil 12's outer hull, newly visible under adjusted light spectra, a carved figure, carrying a book, unarmed, smiling. The same pose as the myth's illustration? Exactly. Panic flooded him. What else had they ignored? He accessed the Imperial Doctrine logs. Section 17. G. Cultural disposal. Entire divisions had been devoted to myth management. Scrubbing, redacting, minimizing. The orders had come directly from the early emperors. Human memory is dangerous, one decree read. They do not build weapons. They build meanings. And meanings endure. Exavar felt sick. He thought of the phrase seen on Sigil 4. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. A consequence. He stood, walked to the balcony above the Scholars' Hall. Across from him, the sky pulsed with Terran light. Black vessels floating like ancient punctuation. Waiting. We called them myths, he said aloud. But they were maps. Someone behind him, young, an assistant, spoke. But maps to what? Exavar turned. Maps to what comes after forgetting. Maps to forgiveness, maybe, or to something worse. He sent one last message to the Thought Engine's Grand Director. We were taught to erase what frightened us. But the Terrans didn't vanish. They prepared. The myths were not warning us about them. They were warning us about ourselves. He turned off his terminal, filed his resignation, and opened the archive to the public. That night across the capital, Terran stories bloomed. On screens, on walls, in the minds of children who had never been taught to fear humans. One child whispered to another, "The ships are teaching us." They always were. The Terran flagship, Vigilant Memory, entered atmosphere like a shadow slipping beneath the skin of the world. No sound, no wake, no turbulence. Capital Defense, Grid Alpha 1, long considered impenetrable, stood silent, not deactivated, listening. From the sky, the ship descended, black-hulled, scarred in ancient patterns. Glyphs across its sides shifted with no light source, symbols that seemed to hum in the eyes. It didn't dock. It settled, levitated, just above the central plaza of the Valari capital, a sacred zone, a place of treaties, of coronations, of executions. Crowds gathered within seconds. Military formations surrounded the site, weapons aimed and trembling. The ship opened, not with mechanical hiss or hydraulic exhale. It unfolded, like paper, like memory. From the center stepped a single figure, humanoid, tall, limbs fluid like ink through water. Armored in what could only be described as living metal, etched with languages thought extinct, breathing faint pulses of color, reshaping slightly with every breath. No face visible, no eyes. Yet the feeling that everything was being seen. A hush fell over the city, over every channel, over the galaxy. This was the first Terran contact in 327 years. No speech came at first, no greeting, until the voice emerged, not from the figure, but around it, through it, modulated in dozens of registers. It carried echoes from every known language, every pitch, every resonance. The message came like thunder, whispered into the bones. We came because your screams reached us. No further words, no weapons drawn, no demands issued, just presence. The soldiers didn't lower their rifles, but they didn't fire either. The figure walked, slowly, one step toward the great archive, another toward the monument of conquest, as if drawn by something older than memory, as if this was not a visit, but a return. Across the planet, chaos muted. People stopped mid-argument, mid-war, mid-lie. Screens flickered, displays failed, and then children began to speak, not in terror, in recognition. One child on the colony moon. Tilax 4 woke from sleep and said, "The ocean is breathing again." Her planet had never known oceans. Another on the mining outpost of Vorn's Edge began humming a song no one had taught him, a melody recovered years later in a declassified Terran transmission from before the Exodus. Reports flooded in. Children dreaming of forests, of wind, of language so old it made the air ache. Dreaming of Earth, a planet they'd never seen, a concept that hadn't existed in 3 generations. But they knew. They called it home. The figure paused at the base of the Monument of Conquest, a statue 30 stories high, built to honor Valari dominance. The statue began to erode, not crack, not shatter, dissolve, into ash shaped like children's hands. A gust of wind, though no wind stirred, swept it away. The crowd gasped. The figure didn't react. It turned toward the government center. Valari officials had fled. Only a single counselor remained, an old woman who had once voted for war, now barely holding her own bones upright. She looked up and said, "Is it judgment?" The figure shook its head. A whisper replied, "No, it's memory, and memory forgives nothing, but forgets nothing either." She wept, not out of fear, out of understanding. Galactic networks scrambled. Broadcasts were jammed, not by human tech, but by emotion. Reporters tried to speak, but found their voices dampened. Microphones caught silence. Then across trillions of screens, a phrase appeared. Home remembers. No bombs fell, no threats followed. And yet across 100 systems, empires cracked, not by fire, by presence. The Terran figure returned to the ship. No one dared follow. As it ascended, a final pulse echoed through the ground, a psychic resonance that would later be translated into feeling, regret given shape. In the days that followed, rebellion sparked without organization. Armies refused orders. Artists painted oceans they'd never seen. Children kept dreaming, and in each dream, a single tree, a single voice, and a message. The first contact was never war. It was abandonment. This is the second. It is remembering. The galaxy had a story, a convenient one. It said the Terrans burned too bright, fought too hard, loved too fiercely, and in their passion, they destroyed themselves. The archives said so. So did the leaders. And over time, so did the people. What no one asked was, what if the Terrans left not from defeat, but choice? It turns out they did. They left behind no monuments, no maps, just stories, buried in data, parables in code, because they believed that in their absence the rest of the galaxy would grow, heal, evolve. But the stars and forgot. Instead came new empires, new tyrants, new wars written with the same old lies. Centuries passed. Blood replaced wonder. Silence replaced truth. The Terrans did not. They waited. They watched. They remembered. Now the vigilant memory stood above 1,000 worlds, silent, not demanding, just present. And with it, the message began. Not in words, not in threats, but in broadcasts, waves of light, encoded patterns, stories, truths. At first, no one understood. Then came the first unraveling. On the war world Carven 7, the skies lit with Terran pulses, government servers crashed, and a single video began looping on every screen. A war tribunal, Velrathi commanders, a genocide long denied, names, faces, coordinates, undeniable. On the diplomatic moon of Nelith Prime, ancient accords dissolved under the weight of evidence. One senator, watching old footage of a colony burning under their own orders, collapsed. Another resigned on air. Some tried to silence it. They failed. You can't jam light. You can't erase gravity. And the Terrans encoded the truth in both. The truth arrived in every form. Testimonies once whispered in prison cells. Images from satellites now scrubbed from history. Audio logs of soldiers begging to stop. Children once lost, now named. Villages erased, now mapped in memory. It was not vengeance, it was documentation. On the empire world of Yseron, a statue toppled, not pushed. Its base melted, reshaped into names. Names the empire forgot, but Earth had not. The High Lords of Kesh called an emergency summit. One asked, "Why are they doing this?" The reply came not from a voice, but a projection, the face of a young Terran boy. Because forgetting was the only crime you never punished. No Terran weapon fired, yet fleets disarmed. Armies surrendered, not to the Terrans, to memory, to guilt, to truth. A merchant captain on the fringe systems wept when his ship began broadcasting a lullaby. His mother sang it. She died in a forced relocation 3 decades ago. The Empire denied it happened. Now it played. With coordinates, with footage, with proof. Across the galaxy, power began to rot. Not with war, with record. The Terran fleet kept moving, not conquering, unveiling, like a librarian returning overdue books, written in blood, and always beneath every transmission, the same phrase. We are not here to make you pay. We are here to make sure you can't pretend you never did. Entire planetary histories were revised in days, not rewritten, restored. The truth had always existed. Earth just carried the receipts. The first emperor of the Viscari once said, "History is written by those who erase it best." That quote now ends every Terran transmission. As a joke, the galaxy didn't burn. It remembered, and for many that was worse. The skies of 1,000 worlds glowed red, not with fire, with arrival. Terran vessels, black, curved, quiet, descended like memories surfacing from deep time. They made no sound, no demand, no display of force, and yet entire planets held their breath. The galaxy had prepared for war, but not for this. In the Hall of Remembrance on Icaron Station, the Terran emissary appeared. The same figure seen across systems, face masked, body armored in living memory. Voiced in polyphonic resonance, it spoke, "We did not come to punish. We came to wake you up." At first, resistance, always resistance. On the rim world Calith, an Empire's war fleet fired on the Terran flagship. 300 missiles, 40 plasma lances, a sunborn beam designed to tear gravity itself. All of it folded. The weapons bent in mid-flight, curved into flowers of light, and vanished. The Terran ship remained untouched, not shielded, not defended, unmoved. A captain on board the attacking vessel screamed, "They don't block force, they rewrite cause." That footage became the most watched broadcast in the galaxy for 3 consecutive standard cycles. One rebel leader on the Freehold Comet watched the transmissions, then said quietly, "They don't use fear, they use inevitability." Refugees began defecting from their former conquerors, not in flight, in formation. They approached Terran emissaries with tears, with silence, and were embraced. No demands were made. Only one question asked, "What do you remember?" Those who answered with truth were healed. Those who lied were shown everything, every act forgotten, every life erased, replayed in memory, not as judgment, but as invitation. Some rulers screamed of mind control, some claimed sorcery, others demanded countermeasures. But you cannot kill what you erased. You can only face it. And facing truth was a technology they had never developed. On Core 8, the warlord of Blood Moons detonated his own throne. The act broadcast live. Just before the screen went black, he whispered, "They didn't kill me. They reminded me who I killed." All across the stars, things stopped. Wars halted mid-barrage. Pirates wept mid-raid. Armies turned around without orders, not from surrender, from knowing, from remembering. In hidden places, in quiet minds, the phrase began to spread, first as whispers, then as prayer, then as policy. Earth is not returning, it's reminding. Children began to dream again, this time of forests, of water, of voices saying, "We missed you, even when you forgot us." Religions attempted to canonize the Terrans. The Terrans refused. "Worship no myth," they said. "We are your consequences, not your gods." A new treaty was proposed, not with governments, with memory itself, a galactic pact. Each world must preserve its darkest day, unedited, unforgotten. Each world must listen to the story of another before it speaks its own. The treaty passed, unanimously. The Terrans gave no technology, only one archive, a living library, inside voices of the lost, of the betrayed, of the hopeful. One alien poet described it best. They did not come with ships. They came with funerals. And turned them into lessons? A final broadcast, played only once, then deleted. It was the Terran child again, smiling, saying, "We never left. We were just waiting for you to miss us." And with that, the Terran ships turned, silently, lifted back into space. No goodbyes, no threats, no applause, just a ripple, in memory, as if the galaxy itself had exhaled. One last signature remained, a beacon, planted beneath the capital world. It pulsed in ancient Terran binary, translated once and never needed again. You taught us war. We taught you forgetting. We came back to help you remember what peace feels like.